and welcome to another edition of the Gospel, raw, uncut, and unheard. My name is Josiah Israel.
My name is Brother Chappelle.
Today we're going to be dealing with identifying Israel today. On our last show, we identified the true Israelites as being a people, as they say, a people of color, black people. But now, because of the fact that there are so many people in this world, many nations of people carry the same complexion. Like if you go into Europe, you will see a lot of people, they look pretty much the same, where, you know, the average person wouldn't even be able to tell between an Irish from an English, or English from a Swede, you know, unless you like real, unless you like was there or maybe knew. But just like in Asia, for instance, you got a lot of people who have the same complexion, their eyes look pretty much the same, and to you, you might think, well, they're Korean, when they in fact might be Chinese, or they might be from Thailand or whatever. Well, same thing with people of a darker hue, black people. You know, Africa, for instance, is where I guess the majority of black people originate, all in that region of Africa, and Africa being probably one of the biggest continents, has many different nationalities there. So again, in the previous lesson, we identified that the true Israelites are a black people. But now we're going to see how, whether or not the Bible can pinpoint exactly which black people are the true Israelites. The Bible teaches us that the Father chose specific people on the face of this earth, that he made an everlasting covenant, and those people are the Israelites. And most people that have read the Bible even a little bit can agree that the Father did choose a particular people, because all of the prophets are Israelites. All of the disciples were Israelites. The Messiah himself is an Israelite. Okay? So if we can agree that the Father did choose a particular people, chose the Israelites as his chosen people, and again, they were chosen to do a particular job, then we should agree also that the Bible should be the one source where we would be able to identify who these people are. Because we already showed again in the previous lesson how they look. But now we're going to be able to pinpoint, according to the scriptures, who they are today. Because today you got so many people trying to claim to be of the true seed of Israel. So-called Jewish people. They claim to be the chosen people. You got a people of a European descent. They have this doctrine called the two-house theory. Or they talk about Ephraim and Manasseh being United States and America. You know, both of these cannot be proven according to scriptures, but we're going to read definitive scriptures to identify who the true Israelites are. Okay? Before we begin, I want to touch on something real quick for the sake of reference. Throughout Israel being a nation, there were three big periods of conversion where there were other people that were converted into, for lack of a better term, Judaism by people, meaning that they, as a people of another race, they follow one thing, but then they join themselves to the children of Israel, and then they became, for lack of a better term, Jews at that point. And we're going to read just a couple of examples of that. First example I want to read is found in 2 Kings, the 17th chapter. And see, it's important to read in regards to these conversions that happened, because what happened since then is that many of these people from these conversions are passing themselves off as Israelites today, when they are not really Israelites. They were only converted to the religion or the heritage of Israel. But because the Father had sent the true Israelites into captivity that we're going to read in this lesson today, Israel has been replaced by people that have been converted into this walk. And we're going to read a couple of examples of this. Let's go on to 2 Kings, the 17th chapter. 2 Kings, the 17th chapter. And let's start this off at verse 1. 2 Kings, 17th chapter, and verse 1.
In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hoshea the son of Elah to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of Yah, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. Against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hoshea became his servant and gave him presents. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison.
So here it reads that Ahaz was a king of Judah at the time when Hoshea, the son of Elah, began to reign in Samaria over Israel, because see, at this time the nation of Israel had been broken up into two separate nations, Israel on the north and Judah on the south. The capital of Israel is Samaria. Capital of Judah is Jerusalem. So that's why we're reading about these two separate kings here. It says that Hoshea, he did evil in the sight of the Most High. So the father brought against him Shalmaneser, the king of Assyria. And because the father wasn't with Hoshea and with Israel, Hoshea became his servant and gave him presents, okay? But then the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea because Hoshea went and made a pact with the Egyptians, and they figured that they were going to come together and they were going to eventually, I guess, conquer over the Assyrians. But that wasn't how the father had this worked out. So, and in verse 5 it says, and the king of Syria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it for 3 years. Okay? Verse 5. Verse 6. Verse 6.
In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria, and placed them in Hala and Habor by the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against Yah their Elohim, which had brought them out of the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh the king of Egypt, and had fear of the Elohim.
Now it is deep how it's phrased this, because it says that the children of Israel, verse 7, had sinned against Yahweh the Elohim, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt, from under the Pharaoh king of Egypt, and had feared of the Elohims. But see, in a process of time, this has been the entire time that Israel was a nation. He took them all the way back to when the father bought them out of Egypt, and now you got this king had become wicked, and he thought that the only way he can get out of the punishment of the Most High that put upon him by bringing the Assyrians over him was to make a league with the Egyptians, and then they'd come together. But he said, wait a minute, I done put y'all out of Egypt, and now you're going to go and make a pact with the very nation that I done bought you out of, okay? But see, that's not going to fly. Okay, verse 8.
And walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom Yahweh cast out from before the children of Israel and the kings of Israel, which they had made.
And that's what they did. When the Father brought us out of Egypt, we desired to still be doing the things we did in Egypt when we was in slavery. Then the Father caused us to become a nation, and then we sought after all the things that pertain to the other nations, the Canaanites, the Philistines, all of their deities. We wanted to worship them and do their ways. That's what he's saying here. We sought to walk in the statues of the heathen, the very heathen that the Father had cast out before us. You know, these heathens weren't strong enough to maintain their power because our power destroyed them. But yet, we still sought after their ways. We have historically been a contrary people, and we are still contrary to this day. We're going to show you who the true children of Israel, and after you go through these scriptures and read this, we're going to see who, at this point, who want to really be Israelite after this, okay? But that's what we did. Okay, verse 9.
And the children of Israel did secretly those things which were not right against Yahweh, their Elohim. And they built them high places in all their cities, from the tower of the watchman to the fenced city. And they set them up images and groves in every high hill and under every green tree. And there they burnt incense in all the high places, as did the heathen whom Yahweh carried away before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke Yahweh to anger.
You know what? And this is no secret, even reading this, how we ended up losing our heritage, how we ended up losing our name. Because even when we had our own heritage, we didn't embrace our own heritage. We sought after the heritage of these other people. That's deep. We sought after their deities. And we're going to see what the Father did to us according to this wickedness that we read about what we did. Keep going. Read that verse 11 one more time.
And there they burnt incense in all the high places, as did the heathen whom Yahweh carried away before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke Yahweh to anger.
And that's deep, because then we ended up getting carried away. That's deep. Verse 12.
For they served idols, whereof Yah said unto them, Ye shall not do this thing. Yet Yahweh testified against Israel and against Judah by all the prophets and by all the seers, saying, Turn ye from your evil ways, and keep my commandments and my statutes according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, and which I sent to you by my servants and the prophets.
Now, you all want to know who are the true teachers of the Most High, teaching the real truth of this thing? All you got to do is look for the very ones that are teaching the very same thing that he said he sent his prophets. They're going to be teaching the same thing. They're not going to be teaching different from what his prophets taught then. That is deep. It says, verse 13 says, Yet Yahweh testified against Israel, against Judah, by all the prophets and by all the seers, saying, Turn you from your evil ways and keep my commandments and my statutes according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, which I sent to you by my servants, the prophets. See, his servants are going to be preaching the exact same doctrine. Okay, they're not going to be preaching a different doctrine. How do we know that? Because the Father don't change. He don't change. Man change. Doctrines change, but his word is true. Verse 14.
Notwithstanding, they would not hear, but hardened their necks like the neck of their fathers, that did not believe in Yahweh their Elohim. And they rejected his statutes and his covenant that he made with their fathers, and his testimonies which he testified against them. And they followed vanity and became vain. And they went after the heathen that were round about them, concerning whom Yahweh had charged them, that they should not do like them. And they left all the commandments of Yahweh their Elohim, and made them molten images, even 2 calves, and made a grove, and worshipped all the hosts of heaven, and served Baal. And they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire, and used divination and enchantments, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of Yahweh, to provoke him to anger.
So they did false worship here. False worship that the heathen taught them. Just like the heathen here in America have taught us false worship, and that's what we've been doing ever since then. You know, but the Father's waking us up as a people. He's waking us up to understand his truth. He's setting us to come up out of Babylon, out of the false doctrine, the doctrine of devils, okay? It says, and they rejected his statutes and his covenant which he made with their fathers. Now, I like that, because in the book of Hebrews, it talks about, it quotes out of Jeremiah 31, saying that he will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant he made with their fathers when they provoked him to anger, but the covenant is going to be the exact same covenant, because he's going to say, I'm going to put my laws into their hearts and in their inward parts. It's the same law, and he made a covenant with the same people, their fathers, and their sons, which is us, he's going to make this same new covenant with us. Okay? And this new covenant is going to consist of those very laws and statutes that we have rejected. It said they rejected his statutes and his covenant, verse 15, that he made with their fathers, and his testimonies which he testified against them, and they followed vanity. Everything that pertains to modern day Christianity is vanity. And I ain't even got to deal with Islam and all those other pagan religions and denominations that's being taught among our people today. All of it is vanity, and became vain, and went after the heathen that were round about them. Okay? Concerning whom Yah had charged them that they should do not like them. Okay? The Romans, or Rome, or the Vatican is not the true congregation. And everything that came out of Rome or the Vatican, whether you call yourself Protestant or Catholic, is all false. And you won't know that unless you open up the scriptures and see that. Because they throw the scriptures in your face, but everything they come with is contrary to it. That's why we got Sunday worship, contrary to the Father's laws and statutes. That's why we got the doctrine of thinking that we can eat anything that we want to, contrary to the Father's laws and statutes, contrary to holiness, period. That's why we have Easter and Christmas and all of these other vain celebrations that honor a whole nother deity and have nothing to do with the Most High. But that's why he said they vain, okay? Verse 16 says they left all the commandments of Yah their Elohim. That's what they teach in the churches today, that we ain't under those commandments. We're not under those laws today. But they don't have no problem keeping those traditions, though. They definitely under those traditions. Okay? They left all the commandments of Yah their Elohim and made them molten images, even 2 calves, and made a grove and worship all the hosts of heaven and serve Baal. Find out the origin of all of these traditions that we keep in the day, and you'll find it all goes back to Baal. All goes all the way back to Babylon and Nimrod. It goes all the way back to that. Okay? Verse 17 says, they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire being a ritual, because Jehovah's Witnesses, they read this, they think it's talking about child sacrifice. But it's not child sacrifice. It was a religious observance they did when they called the children to pass through. When you pass through, that means you go in one way and you come out the other side. It didn't say they passed in the fire. It said they passed through the fire. Like how the Indians do when they're walking on the coals, hot coals of fire. Okay? And that's funny too. My mind thinking about that, thinking about the cartoon Aladdin, which deals with what we dealing with Islamic people, right? Mm-hmm. But we saw in that cartoon, we saw a little thing where they had the coals of fire and over and walk through them coals. You know, that was a funny thing, but that was a true thing. That's something that they do over there. You know, that pertains to, it ain't just some little practice that they just say it's a hobby. It comes from their worship. Okay, worshiping another deity. All right, it says, it said, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of Yah to provoke him to anger. Verse 18.
Therefore Yahweh was very angry with Israel, and removed them out of his sight, and there was none left but the tribe of Judah only.
So, and this is really when that whole term of what called the Jews came from. Because when Israel went into captivity, he removed Israel out of his sight. That only left Judah. So now all the citizens of Judah, or as it was called during Yeshua's day, Judea, they were called Jews at that point. Irregardless of whatever tribe they were from, which at this point there was only 3 tribes that were really represented there, being Judah, Benjamin, and some of the Levites that had came back to live among them. We're going to read about what made them come back. Verse 19.
Also Judah kept not the commandments of Yahweh their Elohim, but walked in the statutes of Israel which they made. And Yahweh rejected all the seed of Israel and afflicted them and delivered them into the hand of spoilers until he had cast them out of his sight.
Okay, skip down to verse 23.
Until Yahweh removed Israel out of his sight, as he said by all his servants the prophets. So was Israel carried out of their own land to Assyria unto this day.
That's deep, because he said, as was spoken by all his servants the prophets. In other words, the prophets had already prophesied that what was going to happen to them, it was going to happen. We evidently didn't believe it, okay, but it did happen. That's what we're going to go back and read, because it's very important to read what the prophets said in regards to us being carried away out of our land. But verse 24.
And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon, and from Kotha, and from Alba, and from Hamath, and from Sepharvaim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof.
Now what we just read here was how the king of Assyria brought men from other nations and brought them into Samaria, and those people replaced the true Israelites that were taken out of Israel. So now we got a people that are in Samaria, and see again, you read this history, and it's important to understand this, because then when you go into the New Testament, you read about concerning that parable about the Good Samaritan, which reads about how this brother was on his long journey, and he got beaten down by some robbers or whatever, and then come along a priest, and he see the man all bloodied up and everything. He don't even try to reach out and help him. He go a separate way. Then I think the story said he see a Levite come along and see him and say, oh man, but then he don't help him. He look a certain way. But then he's got a Samaritan come along. That Samaritan wasn't an Israelite. The Samaritan was a stranger that took over the land. And he see him because, see, the problem is that in Yeshua's day, they didn't deal with Samaritan people because the Samaritan people were not Israelites. The Samaritan people always, when it was convenient, I actually read this out of one of the history books, the book of Josephus, that whenever it was convenient for them, they would pose themselves to be Israelites, but they were not Israelites. Matter of fact, and that's exactly what had happened when Yeshua spoke to the woman at the well. She was a Samaritan woman. And she kept saying, our father Jacob, are you greater than our father Jacob this, and our father's worshiping this mountain, this, that, and the other. And Yeshua had to tell us, hey, woman, you worship you know not what. For salvation is of the Jews, is of the true Israelites. But she kept saying, our father did this. She wasn't no Israelite. But she had been conditioning her mind based on the conversion. We haven't read the conversion yet. We only read that they replaced the true Israelites. Well, we're going to see the whole fullness of that conversion. Let's keep reading. Where we at? Verse 25.
And so it was at the beginning of their dwelling there that they feared not Yah. Therefore Yahweh sent lions among them, which slew some of them. Wherefore they spake to the king of Assyria, saying, the nations which thou hast removed and placed in the cities of Samaria know not the manner of the Elohim of the land. Therefore he hath sent lions among them, and behold, they slay them. They slay them because they know not the manner of the Elohim of the land.
Mm-hmm.
Then the king of Assyria commanded, saying, carry thither one of the priests whom he had brought from thence, and let them go and dwell there, and let him teach them the manner of the Elohim of the land.
So obviously when the Levites or the priests went and taught them the manner of the Most High to these dwellers of Samaria, they were converted. And they started calling themselves, Samaritans or whatever, because everybody knew that Samaria was a capital city of Israel. So based on the conversion, they started calling themselves whatever, Israelites or Jews or whatever, even though by name they were called Samaritans after the capital city of Samaria. But through conversion, they were calling themselves Jews, basically. This is one example of a conversion of a people that had happened, of an entire people that happened, replacing Israel. I want to read another conversion that took place during the time of Xerxes, the king of Persia. This is in the book of Esther. In the book of Esther deals with King Xerxes, or King Ahasuerus, as is rendered in the Hebrew tongue, Ahasuerus, but this is Xerxes, the same Xerxes that was in the movie The 300. Just that same character here, and he was married to Vashti, the queen, but because Vashti was prideful and wasn't humble, he had to remove Vashti, and he had to go get another queen because he had wanted to set a good example with the men in the kingdom there. Okay, so in the process of time, the father had allowed him to marry Hadassah, which was her real name, but her Babylonian name was Esther. And you can read about that in Esther, the 2nd chapter. What happened was there was a servant of the king that wanted to destroy all of the Jews in the land. And because of his marriage to Hadassah, to make a long story short, the father wrought deliverance with the Jews in the kingdom of Persia here. So, based on this, they're celebrating this great salvation that was wrought, that the father had allowed Hadassah, or as they call her, Esther, to bring forth among the people. And something happened based on the event that happened. Esther, the 8th chapter, and let's read about what happened. Let's start at verse 16.
The Jews had life and gladness and joy and honor.
Right, because they were celebrating them being delivered from a certain destruction, okay? And verse 17.
And in every province, in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them.
Right, so all the Jews that were part of this kingdom, because it said in every province and in every city, wheresoever the king's commandments decree came. And understand that this kingdom was the world rulers in this day. Because if you start off in Esther, the 1st chapter, it says in Esther, 1st chapter, 1st verse, it said, Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus. This is Ahasuerus, which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over 107 provinces. So he reigned over quite a few nations in between that whole entire kingdom. So that's what a kingdom is. A kingdom isn't just one nation. A kingdom is a kingdom of a whole bunch of nations make up one kingdom. And so in this Persian Empire, the father had wrought deliverance among the Jews from keeping them from cruel destruction, and when they were celebrating this thing, it said that many of the people of the land became Jews. How do you become a Jew? Because Jews are a people. First, they are ethnic people. So if somebody is not a Jew ethnically, they become a Jew by religion, by conversion. So again, this is the second time that we read about a people in a big, large quantity of numbers converting into, for lack of a better term, Judaism. Okay? And the third instance is one that's not given in the scriptures, because the time that it was done was during the time in between the Old Testament and the New Testament. That was when the Greeks came into the power. And the Maccabees, they were a ruling family in Israel during that time, and all you got to do is look up Edom. Edom was the fraternal twin brother of Jacob and Esau, Edom. And history books let us know that Edom was converted in 125 BC by the Maccabees. Okay? And that's a very important conversion to understand, because the same Edom was the same Edom that was ruling over Judea during the time when Yahshua came on the scene. Because all of the Herods, it wasn't just one King Herod, there were at least 4 or 5 King Herods. It was Herod Antipas, Herod the Great, Herod Agrippa the first, Herod Agrippa the second. So there are at least 4 Herods that I know of. Look it up and you'll find that they were Edom. They were Esau. That's the reason why when those wise men came and they told them about, hey, the prophecy said that it'll be a son, the star is going to be bring forth the son who's to rule over the king, over Israel. He knew it couldn't have been him, because if he was a real Israelite, he could have been like, well, man, maybe I'm the one, that started talking about me. That's what he was talking about. He knew he wasn't talking about him. And so that's why he went and tried to destroy all of the Israelite children that were born, just like Pharaoh did. See, that's deep. So most people don't understand that he wasn't no real Israelite. He couldn't have been. He wasn't destroying his own people. And that's heavy. But he was an Edomite. And those same Edomites stayed in the land after 70 AD when the true Israelites were kicked out of the land by the Romans. We're going to read about that in the scripture in just a few minutes. But the point is that before we get to identifying who Israel really is, I want to touch on the fact that there have been nations of people that have been converted. Matter of fact, and I just want to read this too. Go on to Acts the 24th chapter, because I want to read about one of Herod's daughters, in fact. After we read this, we're going to go into the scriptures as far as identifying who Israel is. Acts the 24th chapter, I just want to read one verse here. Acts 24th chapter and the 24th verse. Acts 24 and 24. I just want to read one verse here. And again, when we read these names, we got to look up the historical aspect of who these people are. Acts 24 and 24.
And after certain days, when Felix came with his wife Drusilla, which was a Jewess, he sent for Paul and heard him concerning the faith in Messiah.
Right. Felix, he was a Gentile. He was a Roman governor. And he married Drusilla. Her father was King Herod. So that would have made Drusilla an Edomite, just like her father was Edom. But she's called here, it says, which was a Jewess. And she was a Jewess. That's how she was identified. She wasn't identified as an Edomite. But what would happen is that later on, based on this conversion, all of Edom was called Jews. Based on the conversion and based on them living in the region of Judea. Because when the Romans saw all the people of the land of Judah, they like, oh, this is they Jews because they live in Judea. We're going to make Herod to be the king of the Jews, even though he was an Israelite. It's real deep when you understand the historical aspect of the scriptures that we're reading about. But anyway, we're going to go directly now into how we can identify who the true Israelite is. Because all these people that have been converted, and even the people today, call themselves Jewish people today, they're not the true Israelites. And I know that sounds like a heavy statement to make, but we're going to read what the scripture says as far as identifying who the true Israelite is. Let's turn our attention into Deuteronomy the 28th chapter. Deuteronomy the 28th chapter. Give you a historical breakdown of what we're about to read briefly. The Father had delivered, as we read earlier, Israel out of bondage in Egypt. And he allowed Moses to teach them in the wilderness for 40 years. Okay? Here in Deuteronomy 28th chapter, Moses is about to die. And the Father said that you cannot enter into that promised land. You're going to die right here in this wilderness. Joshua, the son of Nun, or as you know him, Joshua, the son of Nun, he's going to be the one that brings Israel into the promised land. But right now, I'm going to give y'all a quote-unquote State of the Union address. I'm going to give you guys prophecies for you to pay attention to, and these prophecies are going to take place when you go into your land and when you're going to eventually be kicked out of the land, because I know y'all are a wicked, wicked people. Okay? Deuteronomy 28th chapter. Let's pick this up at verse 45. Deuteronomy the 28th chapter and Deuteronomy 28 and 40. Matter of fact, 46. Let's read this one verse here real quick. Deuteronomy 28 and 46.
And they shall be upon thee for a sign and a wonder, and upon thy seed forever.
as short as this verse is, it's a deep verse. Because it says, and they, we ain't read what the they is yet. It says, but they, and we're going to read what the they is. I just want to give you something here so you will know why we're reading what we're reading. It says, and they shall be upon you, he's talking to the nation of Israel, for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed
forever.
Forever. Okay? Not upon thy seed 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, last year. These are going to be upon you, Israel, for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. See, so that you should be very curious right now what that day is talking about. But one thing you have to know is that this day is how you're going to be able to identify who the true Israelite is. Okay? Let's read what this day is. Let's start this off at the first verse. Deuteronomy 28th chapter and back up to the very first verse.
And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently to the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, to observe and do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that Yahweh thy Elohim will set thee on high above all nations of the earth.
Woo, that sounds good. Hallelujah. Verse 2.
And all these blessings shall come on thee and overtake thee, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim.
That sounds real good. He told Israel that if only we just hearken to his voice and keep the commandments that he commanded us that day, those commandments was our heritage that he gave us. That if we keep these things, he will set us high above all the nations on the earth. We want to be like this nation, but forget this nation. He said that he will set us high above all of these nations on the earth. That is a heavy thing. He said, and all of these blessings shall come on thee, Israel, and overtake thee, if one of the strongest words in the entire scriptures, if thou shalt hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim. Verse 3.
Blessed shalt thou be in the city, and blessed shalt thou be in the field. Blessed shall be the fruit of thy body, and the fruit of thy ground, and the fruit of thy cattle, and the increase of thy kind, and the flocks of thy sheep. Blessed shall be thy basket and thy store. Blessed shalt thou be when thou comest in, and blessed shalt thou be when thou goest out.
Wow, you know what? We're reading about blessings here. I wonder that Deuteronomy 28 and 45, I wonder is it saying that, and all these blessings shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. And you know the reason why I wonder about that? The reason why I wonder about that, because when I look at most of the Jewish people today, man, I don't care what city I go in, and don't think this is a racist thing. In fact, it's fact, real talk. Okay? When I go in there, I see a blessed area. I see a place that I can't even afford to live in personally myself, okay? Blessed. So we done read that a blessing shall be your store, blessed shall you be when thou coming in, when thou goes out. So again, I'm wondering, is that Deuteronomy 28:45, is it saying that these blessings shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder and forever? Because if that's what it's saying, then that would eliminate any black people I know from being an Israelite. But let's see if that's what it's talking about, because so far, I'm thinking that may be what it's talking about here. Verse 7.
Yahweh shall cause thy enemies that rise up against thee to be smitten before thy face. They shall come out against thee one way and flee before thee 7 ways. Yahweh shall command the blessing upon thee in thy storehouses, and in all thou settest thy hand unto. And he shall bless thee in the land which Yahweh thy Elohim giveth thee.
Wow, that sounds pretty good. Go ahead, verse 9.
Yahweh shall establish thee in the holy people unto himself, as he hath sworn unto thee, if thou keepest the commandment of Yahweh thy Elohim, and walk in his way.
Wow, man. This is something that any nation would love to have, these blessings right here. And only thing Israel had to do was keep these commandments. And they're going to be blessed in ways that they couldn't even possibly imagine. But again, I wonder, are these blessings going to be that sign and that wonder that's going to be upon the seed of Israel forever? That's heavy. Let's skip down, though. Let's skip down to verse 15.
But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, to observe, to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
Wow, man, my mood just changed just now. I was in the hallelujah mode before reading about these blessings, but now you done do a little hedge in there now. He says, but it shall come pass if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, to observe and do all his commandments and the statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. Man, let's keep reading. Hopefully, man, we can read through this. Maybe it'll get back to the blessings again. Let's hope that it do, man, because this right here ain't sounding too good right here. Go ahead, verse 16.
Cursed shalt thou be in the city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Cursed shall be thy basket and thy store. Cursed shall be the fruit of thy body and the fruit of thy land, the increase of thy kind and the flocks of thy sheep. Cursed shall thou be when thou comest in, and cursed shalt thou be when thou goest out.
Man, that's pretty depressing, man. You're gonna be cursed, just cursed, and every word that you can think of, is just gonna be cursed if you do not continue to be obedient to the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim. Now, it's kind of funny because we already alluded to the fact that Israel, we already read that, was carried out the land. So we kind of pretty much jumped ahead of ourselves in recognizing what happened. But right now, these people that Moses is talking to, Israelites, they have no conception of having been carried out of their land. But it had happened, right? But let's see more so about these curses, okay? Did you read verse 20? Read that verse 20 again.
Yahweh shall send upon thee cursing, vexation, rebuke, and all thou settest thy hand unto for to do, until thou be destroyed, and until thou perish quickly because of the wickedness of thy doings, whereby thou hast forsaken me.
Wow, that's heavy. That's some serious cursing there. Verse 21.
Yahweh shall make the pestilence cleave unto thee, until he have consumed thee from off the land, whither thou goest to possess it. Yahweh shall smite thee with a consumption, and with a fever, and with the inflammation, and with extreme burning, and with the sword, and with blasting, and with mildew, and they shall pursue thee until thou perish. So let's see what he done said. He done already said that your city is going to be cursed. You're going to be cursed in the field. Cursed shall be your basket and your store, and the fruit of your body, which is your children. Okay, and now he gives us a physical curse about all these ailments and I'm going to tell you, he's going to mention this about 3 more times about this physical ailments that's going to come on us, okay? Verse 23. And thy heaven that is over thy head shall be brass, and the earth that is under thee shall be iron. Yahweh shall make the rain of thy land powder and dust from heaven. It shall come down upon thee till thou be destroyed. Yahweh shall cause thee to be smitten before thy enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and shalt be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. Oh, he finally got down to what we had just read about previously. He said, Yah shall cause thee to be smitten before thy enemies. Thy enemies. That's a key word here, thy enemies. And thou shalt go out one way against them, and flee 7 ways before them, and shall be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. So that tells me that if Israel, and I already know they didn't, because we done already read how Israel was cast out. We done read that clearly. We're going to read it some more, actually. But we done read here, but also we read, the Father said, because they didn't hearken unto the prophets, my servant the prophets, who had warned them about this. We read that. And here, this was the first warning given by the prophet Moses. The first one that brought them out of Egypt, because he alluded to that, and made them a nation.
This is heavy, man. This is very deep. So here it says that they're gonna be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth. Then the king of Assyria moved Israel out of the land as it is to this day, and they were replaced by another people. We read that. Clearly we read that. But the curse wasn't just to those 10 tribes. This curse was to the entire nation of Israel. Because we're going to find out that Judah went the same way that her sister Israel went. In a captivity into all nations. And when they go into captivity to all nations, all of these things we're going to see is what's going to follow them in this captivity. All right? Skip down to verse 29. Verse 28, I'm sorry.
Yahweh shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart.
Okay, despite what your preacher been teaching, if your preacher ever dealt with this chapter, this wasn't no individual type of curse he's talking about. You know, hey, if you don't be obedient, the Father's going to do this to you. He's going to cause you to be this. No, this is talking about a nation of people here. It ain't talking about an individual here. This is a nation, the nation of Israel, that all of these things are going to come. It says, Yahweh shall smite this people with madness, blindness, and astonishment of heart. Okay, go ahead.
And thou shalt grope at noonday as a blind gropeth in darkness. And thou shalt not prosper in thy ways. And thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee.
Oh, wow. He said, thou shalt grope at noonday as a blind gropeth in darkness. He's talking about the people here. What people do we know throughout the world we see have suffered from all of this that we're reading about right here? Because when you find this people, you have put your hands on the true Israelite here. It says that thou shalt grope at noonday as a blind gropeth in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways. As a people, there will be no prosperity. You might find a couple individuals here that might make it a little bit here and there, but as a people, meaning that you go into the neighborhood populated by those people, and you ain't going to want to be there. You only there because you can't afford to be somewhere else. That is the people we're talking about here that would not prosper in thy ways. Thou shalt only be oppressed and spoiled evermore. And it's very important for you all to hear this, because I know right now, many of y'all watching this, especially now at this time, I think that we're doing this before the election, so by the time it's aired, we might have a president that looks just like us sitting in the Oval Office. Father's going to show you that even he cannot save you up out of this condition. Okay? Don't get upset, because we as a people have always had different leaders come up ever since we've been in this particular land that we're in here in America. You could just name them off. Name them off. Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, I'm going all the way back. W.E.B. Du Bois, I'm trying to bring it up. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. We can go ahead. Jesse Jackson. We done had so many people. But the Father made it clear that no man is going to save us up out of this condition. I don't care what position he have. I don't care how much money he may have. I don't care how many people may even follow his beliefs. No man is going to save us out of that condition. And historically, it has stood the test of time. It has stood the test of time. So, brothers and sisters, we must be even the most stupidest people on the face of the earth. We must be the most evilest people on the face of this earth for all of these bad conditions to always follow us wherever we go, or it might be something else. It might be something right here in these scriptures that you walk into these churches in every Sunday morning, but you ain't being taught what's in it. It's time out for that, and we need to see what these scriptures say concerning us. Because I'm going to tell you right off the bat, this is the best black history book that has ever been written, bar none. This is your history, Israel, so-called African American. Let's finish reading this. You know, we ain't going to stop here. It's got so much to cover with this. Your head is about to spin in a minute, okay? But we done said that thou shalt grope at noonday as the blind groping in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways. and thou shalt be on your presence forevermore, and no man shall save thee. Verse 30.
Thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build a house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes thereof. Thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof. Thine ass shall be violently taken away from before thy face, and shall not be restored unto thee. Thy sheep shall be given unto thine enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue.
See, I'm keeping track of this. He used that term enemies again. So everything that pertained to us, even our wives, everything that we had is going to be taken by our enemies. Okay? Everything that we didn't even know. See, that's where we at right now. We didn't even know we had this stuff. We didn't know that we had a heritage. We didn't know that we had a language, a tongue. We didn't know that we had names other than Johnson, Smith, Jenkins. We didn't know we had this thing. And so we can't even conceive about it having been taken away from us. We're going to read another scripture in dealing with that. But he said that our enemies are going to take these things from us. Okay? Verse 32.
Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thy eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thy hand.
Now, we know the example of roots, right, where Kunta Kinte named his daughter Kizzy, meaning stay put, but when she was carried away, the mother and father, all they could do was look, and they could not fight or nothing. They didn't have no might in their hand. But what we're actually reading about here, you got to read it from a historical aspect, is that Moses is talking to the people of Israel there. And he's telling them that your sons and your daughters collectively, you know one example of what happened in slavery, we're going to use exactly in the context that is given, that as they are right there going to be in their land, their sons and daughters ain't going to be in the land. They're going to be given to another people. What people that they were given to? They were given to the same people that they bear their name today. They were given to the Johnsons, to the Joneses, to the Taylors, to the Smiths. All you got to do is look at your last name, and that's who you was given to. Huh? Huh? Okay. All right. Come on. Let's read some more of this word. See, you never knew how true this word was, but this word is so true. It's history. Where do we leave off at? Verse 33.
The fruit of thy land and all thy labors shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt only be oppressed and crushed always. See, the more we read this, the more specific we get. He done already used the term enemy twice already, but now he got real specific about the enemy here. He says, the fruit of thy land and all your labor shall a nation which thou knowest not. These Israelites did not know the nation who would be the ones taking everything that belonged to you. Heavy. He said, a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed. This people is an oppressed people. And crushed always, verse 34, so that thou shalt be mad for the sight of thy eyes which thou shalt see. Absolutely. Mad. You're going to be seeing all this stuff happening, and it done got so commonplace that now we kind of desensitized to it because we lived through this, our fathers lived through this, and the only history that we know of is a plantation history. Because you try to bring us across the water in knowledge and understanding, and we don't have none. It was taken from us. So what we do, we ended up grasping after different forms of doctrine. Egyptology. Egyptology. Islam. The black man's religion, as it was called. Man, I get mad every time I think about that. Because I almost fell for it. I almost fell for that. Man, I almost fell for it, man. It was a deep thing. I'm not going to get into that right now, but this is our history, brothers and sisters. We're reading about our history right here. It says, verse 35. Yahweh shall smite thee in the knees and in the legs with a sore box that cannot be healed, from the sole of thy foot unto the top of thy head.
Oh, he even gave us another physical ailment here as a sign, okay? And I'm just going to say it. You think of any ailments that you could possibly think of, sicknesses, disease, whatever, and this people suffer more from it than any other people on the face of the earth. All you got to do, check your statistics, okay? Whether it be cancer, sickle cell anemia, high blood pressure. We can go on and on and on, venereal diseases. We can go on and on and on, and our people, this people suffer from all of those things more than any other people on the face of the earth, okay? And it's not by coincidence, brothers and sisters. It's not by coincidence. There is a reason for that. Okay, where did we leave off at? Verse 36.
Yahweh shall bring thee and thy king which thou shalt set over thee into a nation which neither thou nor thy fathers have known. And there thou shalt serve other Elohims, wood and stone.
Second time he referred to our enemy as a people that neither we nor our fathers have known. Very important. They didn't know America here, brothers and sisters. Matter of fact, the Israelites here didn't even really know any other Japhetic Gentile people at this time, because the Japhetic people were not even around at this time. They had been gone, living up in the Caucasoid Mountains or wherever they were living at, and it wasn't until Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, that they began to get into power. Then they got into more power when the Medo-Persian Empire came into the power. Then they came into more power when the Greeks came into the power through Alexander the Great. Then they came into the supreme power when the Roman Empire ruled the earth. And everything that we do now is based off of that Roman Empire. America, the nation, is built off of Rome, all the way down to a symbol of the eagle, which we're going to read about in just a minute. It's heavy. I mean, it is so heavy. I wish I had time to really go deeper into this, but all you got to do is do your research, brothers and sisters. Israel did not know anything about this nation that will one day conquer and rule over the true Israelites. And it spells so plainly in the scripture that if this do not fit the so-called African America and all the people of the diaspora that was on the ships with us, then this book is a lie. Okay, I'm going to be just totally honest with you. I can't be as more blunt than this. Okay, let's continue reading, because see, this is the beauty part of that. We ain't sit there and just read no one verse and say, oh, that got to be it. That's it. You know what I'm saying? We, as deep as what we read was, we still ain't even got to the deep part yet. That's how powerful this is. As Yahshua says, he that have an ear, let them hear. Okay? Where we at now? We at, read that verse, okay, we read 36. He said, a nation which neither you nor your fathers have known, and there thou shalt serve other deities, wood and stone. That Jesus, who we have come to call him, is not the Yahshua that you hear us preaching about all the time. You know, when we came into a little nine, we would say Jesus is black, man. Jesus is black. Guess what? Jesus ain't black. Jesus is that same white person that they have called you to worship. That white guy that they show hanging on the cross in all these churches or whatever. See, he is a pale imitation of the true Yahshua, the Messiah, that's right here in these scriptures, brothers and sisters. See, Jesus is the one that you worship every Sunday morning. Yahshua is the one that kept the Sabbath, according to Luke the 4th chapter. And we, being disciples of Yahshua, we also keep the Sabbath, because Yahshua did the will of the Father. He kept the commandments. He taught us to keep the commandments. Jesus tells you, you don't have to keep those commandments no more. Jesus was the one who ate the swine and the catfish and all these other things that were contrary to the law and statutes of the Most High. Yahshua was the one who knew better than that. He ate according to what the Father commanded us to eat. Okay? Jesus was the one that was born on December 25th. who you have taught your children. He was born on December 25th. Therefore, you celebrate this holiday that the heathens call Christmas. Christmas. It's deep, man. It's overwhelming. When I think of all these lies that we've been subjected to here in the land of our captivity, because Scripture said that we're going to be led into captivity to all nations, And again, let me allude to this election thing going on right now as far as Obama. The brother had a little hard time in this thing because of him being taught by his pastor in Chicago named Jeremiah Wright, who said a few things that Gentiles, especially the conservatives, took issue with. Okay? But I just wanted to say this real quickly. You have no right to try to deal with how any black person in this captivity deals with his captivity. I just want to throw that out there. If he was being taught by Jeremiah Wright, and Jeremiah teaching us that, hey, that this American did all these vile things to all these people, then there it is. And that's just something that you got to deal with. Okay? I just want to throw that out there because I can't stand when they start throwing about Jeremiah Wright and this and all that. This is something about, African this or whatever. No. See, because when we got over here, we had everything that pertained to us stripped from us, our name, hedge, and everything. You don't have a right to address how we deal with that. Okay? And I just want to throw that out there because we're not racist. We're just telling you bringing you the truth raw and uncut. Come to our Bible study class. Join us. Whether it regards of you Gentile, Italian, European, whatever, because the truth is for everybody. The kingdom is for everybody. But we're dealing specifically with what happened to our people, the nation of Israel. See, we can't put that on the back burner and just dismiss and say, oh, God loves everybody. Because the scriptures don't even teach that either. It's deep, but the scriptures do not teach that. Okay, but anyway, let's I ain't want to get too far off the top. Let's go back and deal with this. Okay, verse 37.
And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whether Yahweh shall lead thee.
I alluded to that earlier, but we had to come down and read it to see this again. He's saying, thou shalt become an astonishment. Whoa! A proverb, a byword. By the time I think of byword, I think about the phrase, say, man, he done called me everything but a child of God. That's a deep phrase. Because the children of Elohim were Israelites, and they done called you everything but an Israelite. Huh? That's what we are. Astonishment, a byword and proverb among all nations where the Yahweh have led us, brothers and sisters. That's what you are, an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword. Okay? Look at all the derogatory names that we have been called historically since we've been here in this captivity. Many of them I can't even say here on TV. But we understand about the spooks, the coons, porch monkeys. We can say all day and think of some new ones, and they keep inventing more and more as the day go by. Okay? And if that don't suit you as far as a proverb and a byword go, how about just look at the last name of every black person that you know, and then you'll still see that same byword. Because that's not your name. Your name is not Taylor. Your name is not Jones, Jenkins, Smith. That was the name that was given to you. And when you don't have your name, you are not a human. Matter of fact, Constitution said that we were 3/5 of a human. Huh? See, we sit up there and think that was a sad thing. Those people back there, well, they really did us bad, but wait a minute. That's what we have become as the Father has sent us into captivity, into all these nations. Without your heritage, you're not a whole human. You're not. You have been stripped of who you are. If you're not who you are, then what would that make you? That would make you unequal to somebody that still have their name and their heritage. And we're treated as a people, even to this day, as a people without a name and a heritage. See, we don't understand how deep that is, but everybody else do understand that. Deep. You know, that's why when I can walk into a place and tell somebody my name is Josiah Israel, a Gentile, be like, whoa, wait a minute. I can't trace that back to a plantation. But when they hear Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, they hear all of these names, no matter how much money they got, they always trace them back to a plantation. So we don't have no concept of that. That's why we didn't have no concept of why back in the day when we could walk into a store by the Gentiles and the Gentiles be like, oh, I don't want your money, get out of my store. We didn't have no concept of that. Wait a minute, man, why are you treating me bad? I'm just, we didn't know what was going on. Why it was like that? This man owned this store and could probably barely keep his doors open, but yet he won't take your money. What black person can actually relate to that? You understand what I'm saying? And it's a shame that Martin Luther King, the Father bless his soul, didn't understand that context, because if he did, he wouldn't be so hard in trying to prove to the heathen that we are not as you think we are, or wild, crazy people. We don't deserve to be treated this way. We should be able to sit at the Woolworths lunch counter and all this stuff. That was the mindset. If we could convince these people that we are a peaceful people, then maybe they would throw us a bone or two. Maybe they would allow us. See, that was the mindset that we had. But hey, the scripture said that no man will save us, and no man has saved us. I might as well mention this, because every time I jump on this, I go to this. Branch Rickey, he's the owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers. See, he was the more progressive of the Gentiles. He said, you know what? That Negro League over there, they got these Negro owners, and they sitting up there selling out in Yankee Stadium and all that. You got these magnificent ball players. It must be something in their genes or something. If we keep this thing segregated, people are going to get wise. They're going to be like, man, who are the real major leagues? I'm going to take one of those Negroes and bring them into the major leagues. And what that's going to happen is going to make me look like a hero, because he do look like a hero, because people don't know, but it's going to destroy the quote-unquote Negro leagues. See, that's the other side of the coin that they don't give us. Because, see, sometimes we wasn't accepted into going to watch the Yankees. We couldn't go in there peacefully and watch Babe Ruth, Ty Cobb, Mickey Mantle. We couldn't go in there and watch that, and do like we do now when we got the Jaguars and this, that, and the other, and everybody don't think nothing of it. See, back then, we walk in the stadium, they're like, man, where you going? Don't you got the Black Sox playing over there down the street or whatever? Come on now. This is a white man's sport right here. That's the perception. Come on, let's understand what's happening here. So he went and signed Jackie Robinson, who's hailed as a hero. And every time something like that happens, we as a people think we have stepped up. When in essence, we actually went further back. And some years later right now, we're looking at perhaps, and again, this is before the election take place that we're recording this, the first black president, which might not even be related to any of us, because he's actually of Hamitic descent, as far as we know. He's from Kenya. He's African. Now, I mean, we're over there too, so I don't know for sure, but the point is we know that he wasn't bought into this captivity over here like the rest of us. But it makes no difference. He looks just like us, so... but scripture do say that no man will save us, okay? Okay, now back to our regularly scheduled program. Let's go on. Okay, it says, again, he says that thou should be an astonishment, a proverb, a byword among all nations where Yahweh shall lead thee, okay? Let's skip all the way down, because I can't read this whole chapter. Skip down to verse 41.
Thou shalt beget sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity.
We already alluded to that before. Another people should come and take your sons and daughters, and you should have no might in your hand to deliver them from that. He just made it a little bit more clear to us that a people, a nation whose tongue you don't even understand, whose nation you have not known, neither you nor your fathers, are going to come and take your sons and daughters, and they should go into captivity. Wow. Skip down to 43.
The stranger that was within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail.
Look at where we live as a people, brothers and sisters. Because again, he's speaking historically about the nations that came among us then, the strangers, that they would be very high. We wouldn't be the one that would be high even in our own land, but he's talking about when we went into captivity. Even now, strangers that come upon us, when they live around us, they sit above us very high. And we are brought down very low. We're not lending to him, they lending to us. Wait a minute. Okay, now let's go back to the Jewish thing here. Okay? What's the chances that there are Jewish people that own at least some of these banks here, if not the majority of these banks? Okay? Again, we're not being racist, we're just dealing with straight fact. See, the Father allowed them to have what they have so that when it comes down to really recognizing these signs, there'll be nowhere in the world they'll be able to claim this. See, they claim this among the ignorant that have not taken the time to read the true word of the Most High. But for those of us who seek after the true knowledge of history and the true word of the Most High, they are not the people. They were converted into this thing. And the sad thing to say is that they use the principles of what they've been taught to be blessed in the manner that they are blessed. We, on the other hand, have rejected this truth while we were in our land, and we rejected it even more now that we're not even in our own land no more, which brings forth the curses that have come upon us. It says, he shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. Watch this. Verse 45.
Moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee, and shall pursue thee and overtake thee, till thou beest destroyed, because thou hearkenest not unto the voice of Yahweh thy Elohim, to keep his commandments and his statutes which he commanded thee.
He said, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee. They're going to pursue you, and they're going to overtake you until you be destroyed. Verse 46.
And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever.
So we done just realized what the day was. What's the day?
Curses.
The what?
Curses.
We was wondering what the day was. Remember, when we started this, we was wondering what that day was, and we just found out that that day is the curses. That these curses shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. This is how you identify the true Israelite, brothers and sisters. No place else can you try to identify who the true Israelite is. You could try to come with that foolish DNA thing that they trying to come with, all that stuff. None of that matters. The Word, the one who had made a people a chosen people, is the one that can identify who the chosen people is. He didn't say anything about testing your blood, testing your DNA to identify who a chosen Israelite is. Okay? That's man's foolishness, man's wisdom. And it don't work anyway either, because you got to have a true Israelite to be able to balance that DNA against. Okay? But this is how you identify who the true Israelite is. Guess what, brothers and sisters? We done read a lot, and we still ain't even got the tip of this iceberg yet. Okay? We only introduce you to identifying Israel. We still got more prophecies that we got to read concerning this. Okay? Let's go ahead and skip down. Read that verse 46 one more time.
And they shall be upon thee for a sign and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever.
All right.
Because thou servest not Yahweh thy Elohim with joyfulness and with gladness of heart, for the abundance of all things. Therefore thou shalt serve thine enemies, which Yahweh shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst, and in nakedness, and in want of all things. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee.
Wow. He said, because you didn't serve me with gladness, brothers and sisters, therefore you shall serve your enemies. He keeps using that word enemies. Enemies. I say that this is the land of my enemies, the land of my captivity, but I'm viewed as a racist because I'm making this comment. But the Father is the one that said this. See, this ain't, we are not coming from an emotional level. We're not coming from some doctrinal level, people. We're coming from the word of the Most High. Everything that we're saying is coming right here out of the scriptures. It says that because we didn't serve the Father, Yahweh, we have been forced to serve our enemies, which he has sent against us in hunger, in thirst, in nakedness. I just talking about just poverty, what it's talking about there. And poverty is a sign that is given to our people. Okay? Find out where the most impoverished area, wherever you live, that you're going to only see the same people there. I don't care what city you go in. We're doing this out of Jacksonville, Florida. Go up to Chicago and see if you find different people living in the same conditions. Go out to LA, see if there's any chance you'll find another people that don't look like me that's going to be over there and not in poverty. Somewhere where you're going to find the black people going, man, I ain't living over there. I ain't going over there. No way. No way. The only way we say that, we talk about our own people, we ain't going over there, because that's the place we ain't going over. You know, and I ain't going around the Jewish people. That's too dangerous over there, boy. They getting, you know, man, them are cursed people over there. Right. Right. Again, flip side. Find the Jewish people in Chicago, find the Jewish people here in Jacksonville, find the Jewish people in wherever city you go to in the land of our captivity, and we'll see who got these signs on them. Okay? And we're not going to touch on this right now, but we're going to touch on it thoroughly in the next lesson concerning this whole 1948 doctrine being the return of the true Israelites or the true Jews in Israel. Biggest lie ever been told. Scripture defines the true return of Israel. And we're going to read about that after we get finished ingesting, identifying the true Israelite.